Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Shri Caitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, kindly translated and commented by Srila Prabhupada. So we continue the chapter 7, Adi-lila. Text 112. Tanhara vibhuti deha sabachidakara Chid vibhuti achadi tanreka he nirakara Tanhara, his, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vibhuti, spiritual power. Deha, body. Sabha, everything. Chit akara, spiritual form. Chit vibhuti, spiritual opulence. Achadi, covering. Tandre, him. Kahe, said. Nirakara, without form. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Everything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, including His body, opulence and paraphernalia. Mayavada philosophy, however, covering His spiritual opulence, advocates the theory of impersonalism. Please repeat. Everything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, including His body, opulence and paraphernalia. Mayavada philosophy, however, covering His spiritual opulence, advocates the theory of impersonalism. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchid Ananda Vigraha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has a spiritual body, which is full of knowledge, eternity and bliss. In this material world, everyone's body is just the opposite, temporary, full of ignorance and full of misery. Therefore, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sometimes described as Nirakara, this is to indicate that He does not have a material body like us. Mayavadi philosophers do not know how it is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is formless. The Supreme Lord does not have a form like ours, but has a spiritual form. Not knowing this, Mayavadi philosophers simply advocate the one-sided view that the Supreme Godhead or Brahman is formless, Nirakara. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur offers many quotes in the Vedic literature. If one accepts the real or direct meaning of these Vedic statements, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a spiritual body, Sat Chid Ananda Vigraha. In the Brihat Aranyak Upanishad, it is said, Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate. This indicates that the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual. For even though He expands in many ways, He remains the same. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. I am the origin of all. Everything emanates from me. Bhagavad Gita 10.8. Mayavada philosophers materialistically think that if the Supreme Truth expands himself in everything, he must lose his original form. Thus they think that there cannot be any form other than the expansive, gigantic body of the Lord. But the mantra of Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad confirms Purnam idam purnat purnam udachyate. Although he expands in many ways, he keeps his original personality. His original spiritual body remains as it is. Similarly, in Shvetashvatara Upanishad it is stated, Vichitra Shakti Purushaha Puranaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original person, Purusha, has multifarious energies. Sa Vriksha Kalakritivihi Paronyo Yasmat Prapancha Pavirtate Yam Dharmavaham Papanudam Bhagesham. He is the origin of material creation, and it is due to him only that everything changes. He is the protector of religion and annihilator of all sinful activities. He is the master of all opulences. Vedaham etam purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasa parastat. Now I understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be the greatest of the great. He is effulgent like the sun and is beyond this material world. Patim patitanam patinam param parastat. He is the master of all masters, the superior of all superiors. 6.7. Mahan Prabhu Vai Purushaha. He is the supreme master, the supreme person. 3.12. Parasya Shaktir Vidaiva Shuyate. We can understand his opulences in different ways. 6.8. These are statements of Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Similarly, in Rig Veda it is stated, Tad Vishnoho Param Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha. Vishnu, the Supreme, and those who are actually learned think only of his lotus feet. In the Prashna Upanishad it is said, Sa Ikshang Chakre. He glanced over the material creation. 6.3. In the Aitreya Upanishad it is said, Sa Akshata. He glanced over the material creation. And Sa Ima Lokan Ashchata. He created this entire material world. Thus many verses can be quoted from the Upanishads and the Vedas, which prove that the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Godhead, is not impersonal. In the Katha Upanishad 2.13, it is also said, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetanam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidathati Kaman. He is the Supreme, eternally conscious person who maintains all other living entities. From all these Vedic references, one can understand that the Supreme Truth is a person, although no one can equal or excel him, although there are many foolish Mayavada philosophers who think that they are even greater than Krishna. Krishna is Asamarudya, Asamadva. No one is equal to or above him. As stated in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.19, Apani Pado Javano Grahita. This verse describes the Absolute Truth as having no legs or hands. Although this is an impersonal description, however, it does not mean that the Absolute Personality of Godhead has no form. He has a spiritual form, which is distinct from the forms of matter. In this verse, Caitanya Mahaprabhu clarifies this distinction. I'll read the verse again. Everything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, including his body, opulence and paraphernalia. Mayavada philosophy, however, covering his spiritual opulence, advocates the theory of impersonalism. This very beautiful. Now, as we read in the chapter, verse by verse, and all the purports, now Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Srila Prabhupada in his purports bring more and more references from different parts of the Vedas, different sections of the Vedas, to support the personal concept of Godhead. See, apart from science and logic and rational way of understanding that God has a form, since we have a form, so He has a form, the Vedic reference is the ultimate authority. And of course, the commentaries by great acharyas, great personalities, Mahabhagavatas, not to speak of Mahajanas, great authorities of Vedic knowledge, wisdom, they definitely support the understanding with references, which is very important for us too, because at some point we have to have the references at hand. Just like a lawyer, he cannot just defend a case based on emotions or so-called logic. Then naturally there is reasoning, logic, and a rational understanding of the case, but at some point the authority is the law book. So we accept the references, the Vedic references, as the ultimate authority. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur expertly brings all these references from different parts of the Shastras, first of all, for us to understand. So we are very clear, we have a clear mind that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you see this purport here, how many times Srila Prabhupada mentions Personality of Godhead, Personality of Godhead, Godhead, Godhead. So there has to be achieved the ultimate. And Srila Prabhupada, if he sees a selection of words, especially when it comes to Godhead, why just not say God and Godhead? Because there's so many misunderstandings even about that, especially in India, as we know that so many people still in the karma kanda worshipping demigods. They are confused about the position of God. So they either they have the chosen God and claim to be He is the ultimate, or they think they're all equal, which is an offense ultimately to the Supreme, not to speak of His holy names, because Krishna is the ultimate. Ishvaraha Paramaha, Supreme Ishvaraha, Supreme Controller. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha, Satchid Ananta Vigraha, Anadi Adi Govindaha, Sarva Karana Karana. And even Srila Prabhupada brings this verse, particularly in this context, because now Caitanya Mahaprabhu clarifies and ultimately defeats, gives the ultimate solution. And of course the purports and the previous verses, in the last 100 verses in this particular chapter, is gradually building up to this momentum of clarifying and bringing references and ultimately defeat the ignorance of Mayavada philosophy. As we know, Mayavada is a deviation of the original understanding, and they consider Krishna as Maya. So there's a very fundamental flaw here, which takes them in another direction, in a very offensive direction, because they deny Krishna as the supreme divine person. They not only that, they think they can take that position or even become greater than Krishna. So you can see the delusion, the ignorance. But of course, this is just another feature of Maya in the material world. The material world is very misleading, you can see, unless we fixated on the proper Siddhanta, Vaishnava Siddhanta, under the guidance of great authorities and our spiritual master, of course, because we have to constantly clarify this, who is Krishna and what's our relationship with him. It's not enough just to read a few passages from the books, but we also have to understand and realize by practical application, by service, seva. So when we serve Krishna and his devotees, a lot of these things become more and more clear. Krishna helps us within. He gives us the realization. So when we have the realization, we have not only conviction, but also we become more determined to pursue and continue the path of devotion. It's a very blissful path, but there are also tests. Because we're in a material world and we are full of, as you can see, even in a larger material world, there's so many different kinds of belief systems. You know, even amongst the political parties, the constant debate and constant enmity amongst different views and perspectives and how to. So the same in the spiritual matters. And this is just a bit more subtle, more subtle, because the material world is such that we are bombarded by this ignorance. And of course, being in the material world, we're in the clutches of Maya, the Krishna's energies, Prakriti, you can say. And the Mayavadis don't understand the difference between Prakriti, material nature, and Krishna's superior nature, the spiritual nature. So often they bring the idea of God or Godhead to their platform, thinking that God, because is not visibly, if we can't perceive him, he hasn't got a form like we have. So they think God in a material way, not in a spiritual way. Of course, in the beginning, people who don't understand the scriptural injunctions or the logic behind and the science behind the Vedic teachings, they may consider this is just a sentiment, or you believe in God, God has a form, okay, but we can't perceive him. Of course, Krishna is not subjected to our analysis. We have to accept the authority first of all, and then second, by practical application, by service, and studying the Vedic injunctions under the guidance of authorities who are realized, we also get an access, we also get the realization who Krishna is and actually manifesting in a very beautiful divine form, blissful form, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Then the next platform, okay, when we understand who Krishna is, whether he has a form or not, when we understand these things, then we can relate to him at least in a personal way, and we understand our true position as servants of the Supreme, loving servants of the Supreme. But now we have to clarify this illusion even within ourselves, because although we're progressing in spiritual life, but the conditioning and our education and our material environment around us, they tend to bring us down to a different perception, although we read. That's why it's so important to keep the sadhu sangha, the association of Vaishnavas, the like-minded devotees, constantly remind ourselves and purify ourselves so we can keep in touch with reality, the transcendental reality. So these purports here, these beautiful texts, not only reminding us but explaining systematically, step by step, who Krishna is, and he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have a loving relationship with him, and we can connect to him through bhakti, devotion, by chanting the holy names in so many ways. So, but we are also ready to defend the Vaishnava Siddhanta. So we all, individually and collectively, we should cultivate knowledge sincerely. Because we can get challenged. There are very intelligent Mayavada philosophers also who actually find ways to defeat us. They know our philosophy. They know our, trying to find some kind of catch, some kind of course there's no weakness in our philosophy, but they don't see that. So we're trying to so we have to be ready for at least we should strengthen our own conviction. We're not here to debate with anyone really, unnecessarily. But if we get challenged, we should be able to defeat. We should be able to respond scientifically, logically, and scriptural references, just like a lawyer would do when he argues in a court. The magistrate court judge, he sees not only the rational explanation and the witnesses, but also ultimately the references. What is the base of the argument? So when we read all these scriptures and all great authorities, not to speak of Mahajanas mean great authorities of Vedic knowledge, the empowered personalities, they're coming here to strengthen our understanding. They reveal knowledge. Often they avatars themselves. So they're giving us strength and knowledge and clarity, because we are attracted to Krishna consciousness initially for we have our individual reasons, of course. Some of us may have suffered or have not very good conditions, materially speaking. We were distressed and we were attracted to something more, promises more peace and happiness. And of course the devotees themselves are very attractive. So we came to the association of devotees. But at some point we also have to understand the science, because we're not here to be sentimentalists. We are here to be rational, Vaishnava students who understand things clearly and apply it properly. So that way we can attract the Lord's mercy, and by His mercy we can get realizations. We can actually get some access to this deep transcendental knowledge, Divya Jnana, transcendental knowledge. So you can see Srila Prabhupada expertly refers to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur expertly refers to the Vedic references. Many Upanishads actually clearly supports the personal understanding. The God is a person. He's not an impersonal person. He hasn't got. Although he has, he's complete, but ultimately he's a person. Everything emanates from him. He's the cause of all causes. Sarva karana karana. He's the cause of all causes, and he's the supreme divine. And so Caitanya Mahaprabhu clarifies this distinction, because the Mayavada philosophers, they're very expert in jugglery. They're able to quote different sections of the Vedas, and then unless we are firmly established in a Siddhanta, in a Siddhantic philosophy, then we don't, either we get confused or we're unable to defeat this misconception. So that's why, like when there's a serious case, especially some kind of court ruling, they try to get both parties try to get the best lawyers, because they have to present knowledge and the references and the law and the case, and they study the case to substantiate the actual case. And of course the judge sees this, and he is not supposed to be partial. He has to see from the eyes of the authority. So similarly, ultimately we meant to see things through the eyes of the scriptural injunctions, Chakshushaha. We meant to see knowledge. What is knowledge? We have to clarify that also, and we apply it. And of course, ultimately Krishna is the supreme judge, so he knows. And And the purpose of human life, as we know, we have to understand these things and fulfill the mission of life, which is to become God-realized, self-realized. And in this way we gradually progress and developing our love and devotion to the Supreme. And of course it requires patience, study, practice, and good association, like-minded souls, and whoever, whether it's a beginner or advanced devotee, they sincerely practice, and we help each other. Obviously, we encourage each other, because it's not an easy process. We challenging the ignorance of the world, basically, because we having a completely different perspective on the reality. What is reality? And that should be understood again through the spectrum and perspective of Vedic scriptures. And the Vedas very clearly explain that Krishna is the Supreme. And Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita establishes that I am the Supreme, see, Para Brahman, see, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the beginning we may appreciate this sentimentally, yes, we accept it from good heart, we are attracted to Krishna, there's a punya, there's a sukriti, there's a natural attraction to devotion service. But at some point we should become established in knowledge. So individually and collectively we should aim to develop profound knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And we have so many books here, of course, and we can study them systematically, patiently. And any questions or any doubts we can ask the senior devotees, the spiritual master, so we can clarify things. And as we go on, we understand things more and more. In the beginning, it's a bit difficult to understand everything as they are. Just like when you learn engineering, you have to go systematically. You have to go gradually. You can't just comprehend, understand the whole thing from one class. You have to go gradually. So same with Krishna consciousness. Gradually develop profound knowledge. And that profound knowledge will lead us to devotion, love, pure love for God and for His creation, basically. And so this is the way to practice bhakti yoga successfully. Because we have the process. The process is very simple, actually. It's devotion service, chanting the holy names, the Maha Mantra. They're all there to help us. But just to become more conscious and more successful, we have to study Srila Prabhupada's books as far as possible. So many things we need to understand. It's not that cheap. Krishna is not that cheap. We have to make the effort. We have to discover our relationship with Him. And that's why Srila Prabhupada kindly, our grand spiritual master, kindly explains the philosophy of Krishna consciousness very clearly, systematically, simply. And a sincere student or seeker, he was just seeking, they get benefit out of it. And at some point you have the realization, you feel, wow, this is actually some potency here, Shakti, energy, devotion. It's not just some philosophy for the sake of philosophy. We are not here to be armchair philosophers, although we discuss philosophy, but ultimately comes down to an experience. We want to be happy in Krishna consciousness, and we want others to be happy as well. So the devotee always think of others' benefit also. Let's spread the devotion, the knowledge of Krishna consciousness as far as possible, wherever, whoever is willing to receive. And honest and sincere seekers who are intelligent, but they are confused by the material world, they'll come forward. They'll come forward and see, wow, this is very attractive to me. It promises peace and happiness and love. And if we spread this knowledge more and more, then more and more peace and love will take place on our planet. Not just individually, but collectively, and even globally. Even Srila Prabhupada, in certain context, in conversations, he made it very clear that if you distribute my books, and if you do Harinama and spread Krishna consciousness, the world will change. It might take some time. And that change, we don't know how it's going to take place, but Krishna knows, and the process is very powerful, very powerful. I mean, it can change people's lives completely. If not for Srila Prabhupada, we would be somewhere else, doing something else. It changed our whole life, our perspective. Not only that, we actually value, we start appreciate, value. We feel grateful to Srila Prabhupada. So he clarifies these things in his purports. So we get the benefit, first of all, as students, hearers of Vaishnava Siddhanta. And of course, we can defeat, at least defend the Vaishnava philosophy. Because we're going to get challenges. People are going to challenge us. Why you believe in this? Why you say Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So we have to have some references. We can learn slokas, we can explain things, keep it simple so it's very clear. And we have all the references. And we should not be doubtful, we should try to understand these things. And then when we understand these things, we will have potency, we can have an impact on them, see, because we have a conviction, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada's potency was so great that he often influenced even Mayavada scholars and sannyasis, just like Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Mahaprabhu, obviously the Supreme Sri Krishna Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he had a direct impact on these Mayavadi sannyasis. Of course, we don't have that potency, so we try to defend the Vaishnava Siddhanta with Shastric knowledge, Srila Prabhupada's teachings, of course, his books, his references, and Krishna himself, because the Upanishads and then the Bhagavad Gita especially, Krishna himself speaks about his position, so we can defend. So people can see there is actually a science behind this, a very particular science, and there's also references. It is not just some belief system based on some sentiment. And even archaeologically, historically speaking, the Vedic knowledge is very old, going back to time immemorial. So you can see that there was a powerful spiritual guide, or I would say spiritual knowledge since time immemorial. We call it a Vedic civilization, or Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma. It's a spiritual path, transcendental path of self-realization. So we try to revive that in our lives by practice, by devotion, and spread this knowledge of Krishna consciousness. I see the Mayavada philosophers, they try to find weakness in our philosophy. So sometimes they're quoting verses from Upanishads even, where it can be understood both ways, whether God is impersonal or personal. So they're trying to catch our Siddhanta philosophy. Siddhanta means philosophy. So, but we have to be confident, because actually far more obvious evidences to defeat any challenging person, although they may come as scholars or Vedic, whoever they are. No, we should be firmly convinced in the teachings of our spiritual master and our Vaishnava practice, and focus on the lotus feet of Krishna. Then we can't go wrong. We just have to have that simple faith. Ultimately it comes down to a very simple thing, having love and faith in Krishna and the spiritual master. We can't go wrong, because they are the ultimate guide within our heart, externally in many ways, devotees, the Supreme Lord is directly helping us. And we worship the deities here because we can understand that we can deal with Krishna in a personal way We can dress him, we can chant his names, holy names, we can cook for him, we can make garlands for them. So you can see that God is not impersonal, he's actually very much a person. And that's a very blissful part of Krishna consciousness actually. When we're dealing with a blissful person, the supreme friend, the supreme father of all living entities, the well-wisher, the best well-wisher, Krishna. So we're dealing with such person, wow, that's very blissful. Just the idea that Krishna is such a pure, divine personality, he's our well-wisher, our best friend, he's a person, he's got pastimes, he's got activities, extraordinary activities. Just to meditate on this, we feel love. But if God is impersonal, we can't relate to him. If we just talk, God is just the universe or nature, they are his energies. These are his energies, nature. We all have a nature, so God has a nature also. So this is a nature, the different prakriti, we call prakriti, material energy. And when we understand these things properly, then we can actually understand God is actually here in 3 dimensions, in Archa Vigraha. Although God is not subjected to dimensions, he's above all these things, transcendental. But he comes to, so we can perceive him, he can accept our services, our loving services and sentiments. So devotees are worshipping the Lord with devotion, cook for him, dress him, pray to him, care for him. Amazing, all these beautiful relationships. And then as we do these devotional activities, we also get the feeling of caring for Krishna, loving Krishna. We want to care for Krishna. But of course Krishna is not depending on us, but he's giving us a chance, an opportunity, so we can approach him with humility, love and devotion. And then that way we also blossom, our devotion to Krishna blossoms gradually, patiently. So, and this is therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you see this as the next verses can be really more and more clear about the ultimate conclusion of the Vedic knowledge, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, a lot of these purports can be explained in so many examples, metaphors, science. Advanced devotees can even break it down even more, make it very clear for us. But Srila Prabhupada gives the essence, and you can see Prabhupada's teachings and purports. He always relies on authority. Not only his spiritual master, but the previous acharyas, Mahabhagavata acharyas. So it's nothing to do with speculation. It's all based on authority and science. In every way, science. Even like if you don't believe in spiritual science, then go into the actual science, like analytical science, or experimental science, how they call it. You can actually go even in mathematics, nuclear physics, everything substantiates. If you actually study patiently, you can see that ultimately comes to an origin. There's no such a thing, things come from nothing. There's no such a thing. Everything has an origin ultimately. See, somewhere there's an origin. And that's why Sarva Karana Karanam, cause of all causes. Krishna is the ultimate cause, and everything just kind of emanates from him, from that personality, and manifest. Yes, Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for the class, very informative. You mentioned about how the scriptures also state that we need to keep devotee association. So we have guests who come and then they go back to their country and they may not be devotees. So how to keep that association?
Okay, see, obviously, it's a very good question. Because people come and go, see, people, intelligent people come and go, and obviously they see this as a information powerhouse of Vedic knowledge. And the devotees themselves depend on the advancement, of course, and the qualities. We can leave a very strong impact on them, impression, see. So if we are good devotees ourselves, and practice Krishna consciousness nicely, good sadhana, manifesting nice qualities, that remains with them, first of all, number one, because they don't know much of a scripture, or they're just attracted to us somehow or other, through prasadam, through kirtan, through devotees. But they remain, our good qualities, that remains with them. I actually met such a nice people in Australia, so that when they go back to their countries, but some things we don't have a control over. Krishna knows. Krishna will guide them. If Krishna knows they're sincere to continue, depends on the punya, depends on how much they're willing to receive in Krishna consciousness. And nevertheless, they always get the benefit coming to the farm, even if they go back to Europe or wherever they're going. And often they actually find the devotees. Paramatma, Krishna himself will take them, okay, continue here, continue there. We can't always follow everyone, obviously, because there's so many people coming, going. It's like a marketplace of the holy names, you see, people coming, going, coming, going. Not everyone can afford expensive commodities. Some people just buy whatever they can afford. So people come here to learn about Krishna. They take prasadam, they appreciate the devotees, and they obviously get a benefit, eternal benefit, by the way. Krishna appreciates that. So they continue somewhere. And who knows, Krishna has a plan, we don't know, because they may have to even go back and maybe preach there or help something there. What we have to do ourselves is to become accomplished preachers. We have to develop those qualities, have a strong impact on people, whoever comes across, and encourage them, lots of encouragement. That's what we can do, really. And then the rest is up to Krishna, and then in their heart, Krishna knows. So we can't control the whole process, unfortunately. If we could control the whole process of preaching, we could probably turn the whole world Krishna conscious within our life. No, we do our best according to our capacity, our knowledge, adhikari, and then we leave a good impression, and they continue. But if we ourselves not behaving or conducting ourselves like a proper Vaishnava or Vaishnavi, we don't exhibit kindness or patience or not encouraging them, it doesn't stay with them, it kind of get the wrong impression rather. So our business is to leave good impression. And this is not just in the farm, but anywhere. We should conduct ourselves as gentlemen and ladies. We're representing Srila Prabhupada either directly or indirectly. We have to be very careful how we conduct ourselves. And this way, Krishna consciousness gradually, by the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, spread more and more. We're touching people's lives. And many of those people who come forward want to hear more. Not everyone can take it fully. It's a very rare thing, actually. If you analyze, the devotees who can practice properly sadhana bhakti, devotion, they're very rare personalities. It's not a cheap thing. God is not a cheap thing. So we come here and we are receiving special mercy here. We have these blessings, and so we should be grateful. One of the first things a devotee expresses gratitude. We are very grateful to our spiritual master. And of course Krishna is always responding, and he knows exactly where we are. And he's giving us the intelligence also. Yeah, that's what I can say. Unless you have some other, any comments? Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. It's reminding us that we need to be representing Prabhupada.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes when people go in their country, they don't have any devotees, so maybe we can connect them with the online devotees. Because now with COVID, there's many online groups.
A very good point, because you see, as devotees, especially when you're a preacher, you start feeling compassion. You have a sense of compassion. You start feeling for people. Maybe not like advanced devotees, but we have those feelings, emotions. Let's help these people. Let's distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. Let's go on Harinam. Let's follow up these people. Contact sales or books or whatever. We care for them. So we use whatever facility available to outreach, whether in a different geographical location, different continent. We're trying to keep in touch with them as far as we can and stimulate their interest, somehow or other keep in touch with Krishna. And that's a very powerful way also, not just... so internet can be used properly, very effective also. So we can try as much as we can, whatever facility we have. Yukta Vairagya, utility is the principle, so we can see, we can use this facility in the right way, with the right consciousness. So we can have an impact, we can keep them in contact with us. Very good, thank you. Any other question? Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.